lucky woman. For Peanut.
You're not going to beat this energy. As we have said on this program time and time again, if every single Trump voter, if every single Trump supporter becomes a Trump voter, then we win. Then it's Ben won. Hey, Alex, can you grab me the memo from the Trump campaign yesterday about turnout? This is your president at 2 a.m. Where was Kamala at 2 a.m.? Drowning in a box of wine. Rattling around with her, like with a purse filled with bottles of Xanax, screaming at her staff. We know this based on a number of reports and based on Kamala Harris's own schedule yesterday, where she was giving 7-minute speeches and then leaving. Kamala Harris is in free fall right now. There was a marked change in Kamala Harris yesterday and the way that Kamala Harris was interacting with voters. And it's when this memo came out. I want to talk through this because I want to be very, very accurate here. We have a number of data experts coming on the show. We have lawyers coming on the show in the second hour. We'll get to all of the actual hard data, and I'm going to not sugarcoat. So here we go. The state of the race is this. Republican turnout in early voting. And we're going to talk about what we know today and the data that we have right now. You know, it's 11:21 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, what we have right now. We're going to jump to that very quickly. But what we know about early voting is this. That Republican turnout has been strong. It hasn't been overwhelming. Like, you're not seeing percentage increases in like the 20, 30, and 50%. What you're seeing is strong, robust Republican turnout that matches or exceeds by 5, 6, or 7 points what you saw in 2020. This is as Republicans adopt early voting, adopt mail-in voting, and so on, depending on what is legal in your locality. So that's good. Republicans are steady as she goes. All right? Hand to the flint, nose to the grindstone. Republicans are grinding out their votes, okay, and doing a great job of it. Here's where the crisis begins. Democrats are nowhere near where they were in 2020. In fact, Democrats are down by millions of votes. Democrats head into this election down millions of votes. Democrat urban centers, Democrat voting blocks are not showing up. What this memo shows in swing states from the Trump campaign is that urban voting and women voting is down by orders of magnitude in every single swing state from 2020. That Democrats who often do not vote on election day have cannibalized their votes. And there are reports out this morning of effectively ghost towns in Fulton County, in Allegheny County, in Pennsylvania, in the big, large metropolitan areas, in massive swing states, in Detroit and in Milwaukee. In Maricopa County this morning, Republicans are winning 2-1 in the election day turnout. In Arizona, Republicans have a 200,000 vote advantage in the early vote. So this memo from the Trump campaign shows you the state of the race. The state of the race is effectively tied right now. I'm not going to try and sugarcoat it and tell you that like Republicans are ahead by thousands of points. We'll get to Florida in just a moment and what this means. The state of the race is that in the early vote, many of these states are effectively neck and neck, Some have small advantages, Republicans, Arizona, Nevada, North Carolina. Some have small advantages, Democrats, like Pennsylvania have a small Democrat advantage in the early vote. But what's seen across, and if you could scroll through the memo, please, Killer Klein. What is seen as the trend across all this is that Democrats should have a massive advantage heading into this election day. A monstrous advantage, and they don't. An election day, heading into election day as a tie, or in some type of, with Republicans having a slight edge, spells doom for Democrats in major must-win swing states, especially Georgia, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania, which are states that are in the Eastern time zone and will be announced quite quickly. Like, we could have the Georgia results at like 8 p.m. tonight. You'll start to see what's actually happening there. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a excellent trend. It's a trend that was talked about on CNN by a Trump campaign advisor, and as he explained it, it was like you could see like the ashen faces of those across CNN, like saying, "My goodness, where are we going to make up these votes?" Now, in a moment, I'll get you, and guys, I'm talking about the Mark Lauder clip from CNN. Let me know that we got, okay, great. Okay. And then we're going to go to Van Jones, because this is something that this is data that is being seen, digested, interpreted as pure doom for an election day where Democrats must turn out in overwhelming, catastrophic, like blue wave, unheard of numbers, which of course will be impossible, because that doesn't happen when 28% of the country says that the country is going in the wrong. 28% of the country says the country is going in the right direction. When 80% of the country says that this nation is going in the wrong direction, you will not have wave elections for the ruling party. When Donald Trump won 19 of 20 bellwether counties last election, you're not going to erode that. Donald Trump is more popular than he's ever been. Donald Trump has expanded his base, expanded his coalition in every arena. And ladies and gentlemen, the doom, the sunken ashen doom, is starting to be a pall on CNN. Check this out.
The math doesn't work. The Democrats are down 1.7 million early votes in the battleground states. In urban areas, they are down 1.4 million votes in the battleground states. Among women voters, rural voters have overperformed early by 300,000. Democrats have to win their races early. Republicans generally win them on election day. And the margins don't add up right now for the Democrats in any of these battleground states.
The margins don't add up. Too big to rig is what President Trump has been saying, is what we have been saying on this program. Too big to rig. Van Jones worried about it on CNN. Let's just set the table here, and then we're going to jump into the hard data and what this tells you with the Florida returns, because Florida is one of the few states that does live returns, where you can see this should happen across the country. Of course, Democrats and Democrat governors have archaically wound down the capacity to understand what's actually going on inside of their states, like Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. They do this on purpose so they can cheat. But Florida is one of the few states in the entire country that does live reporting. And there are numbers out of Florida right now that will make you sing, okay? First off, here are libs crying on CNN already, okay? This might be our first cry of the day already with Van Jones. Let's go.
Philadelphia is where we've got to run up a big margin. But Philly overall has been trending down, not in terms of going toward the Republicans, just people not getting out to vote. And so you got people out there like Pastor Carl Day, who's got a bunch of young men with him, knocking on doors, trying to get people to come out. It's a bigger, tougher fight in Philly to get that vote count up than it has been in the past. That has me worried. The other thing that has me worried is that the Jewish vote in the suburban areas Biden won the Jewish vote by 70%, 70-30 last time. Some polls show Kamala at 50-50. That is 70,000 votes we've bled away. That is the margin for victory.
Van Jones saying that just the losses are enough for the margin for victory. Okay, so let's jump into the hard numbers here. Ladies and gentlemen, and explain to you the actual state of the race. Because the MAGA movement is breaking records right now in early voting. Has already broken records in the early voting and is actively breaking records right now in the active election day voting. Here we go. Check this out. And I'm going to explain to you the significance of this. Because you're going to sit there and tell me, okay, Florida's a red state. We already understand this. Okay, let me explain. If you're heading into election day and Democrats have a massive enthusiasm gap, and that's what we know right now based on the data, based on the hard numbers that we currently know, there is a monstrous enthusiasm gap where Democrats have effectively eroded or lost millions of votes since 2020. Where urban centers are not showing up. My entire social feed is filled with photos of empty lines and empty polling places in downtown Detroit, Milwaukee, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh. Yet there are lines for a country mile in Amish country, Pennsylvania. There are lines around the block and down to the McDonald's in farming and some of the Republican suburbs around Philadelphia. There is an enthusiasm gap that is measurable and true, okay? Now we get to Florida. Here's why this is important. This is what's happening in Florida right now. And boys, let me know if this is up to date at time of show. I want to be 100% accurate. What you're seeing in Florida is, and what Florida will be, is a canary in the coal mine for how much enthusiasm is actually real in the Republican Party. So we've seen enthusiasm gaps between this election and last election for Democrats. How much is there an enthusiasm surge for Republicans? Florida will be the state that will let us monitor that because of its live monitoring. These are the live results from Florida right now. Ladies and gentlemen, with the exception of one gluttonous welfare county up here that subsists entirely off of the obesity of government handouts right here. This is the state capital of Florida, which is an absolute disaster zone, quite frankly. It should be totally and completely reformed, or maybe moved. Just shut it all down. With the exception of one blue county that votes, Robbie telling me that this is the cow. Either way, this is right. This is where Tallahassee is. Okay, so this is where the hellscape of the state government in Florida is, and the people that subsist off of it. So throw this county out. Republican is voting red by a larger percentage than ever in the history of the state. Miami is freaking red. Where we are living right now, which is supposed to be a blue county, is freaking 50-50 right now. This is where we're broadcasting from. Broward is just the slightest of blue. Miami is freaking red. Miami, which is like one of the biggest melting pots for immigrant communities, for Puerto Ricans, for Haitians, ladies and gentlemen, has gone to Donald Trump, is actively going to Donald Trump. And it's about to get worse throughout the day. Democrats vote early, Republicans vote on election day, and these are the results, and it's not noon. Ladies and gentlemen, what this shows is a 25-point GOP advantage. Here's the hard math of what this election map means when it comes to advantages. If the GOP, based on election based on registrations. If the GOP in Florida had a 10-point advantage, it would be dicey. It would mean that Kamala Harris is running neck and neck with Trump. And the Kamala Harris's message has activated her voter base, that Republicans are depressed. Because there is a voter registration advantage for Republicans, a 10-point advantage would mean underperformance of Republicans. If there is a 15-point advantage, then that would mean good signs for Trump. That would mean an over-indexing of Republican voters in the state of Florida. An over 20% advantage in this state means historic landslide levels of support for Donald Trump that is transferable to the rest of the country, because never in an American election has Florida gone more red and Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania gone more blue. Every single time that's happened, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin all move with Florida. Florida is a bellwether state. Because of its election reporting system, you are able to see in real time what's happening in this state and project that nationally. It's not a perfect one-to-one. But I'm telling you right now that Florida Republicans winning by 25 points is an indication of a landslide for Donald Trump. This is what doom looks like. A little birdie told me, because we kept posting about, trolling the Kamala Harris rally that was here in Tampa, that the reason that Hillary Clinton was dispatched to Tampa after some long nights in Jeffrey Epstein's cell was, Diddy's cell, that's the new one, was because there are so many desperate members of the House that are from where I live. Kathy Castor is one of them, who's a Democrat member of the House that should have a safe seat, and now all their internal polling says that their seat's not safe anymore. That the Republican enthusiasm is so high that it is beginning to crush even the biggest firewall, as they call it, for Democrat members of Congress from the state of Florida. That Florida may well deliver the most Republicans in its history to the U.S. Congress this election. And ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, there's only one blue county in the entire state. So this is a massive indicator. If you're looking for signals right now, this is a signal. Here's more signals, ladies and gentlemen. Republicans have already flipped a seat. Northern Mariana Islands has flipped from blue to red. In Guam, now these are, of course, islands that vote way ahead of us, right? They're in totally different time zones. It's like an entire day away, right? Their elections have already been ongoing. In Guam, Donald Trump is not only outperforming by 20 points, but the legislature in Guam, which is American territory, is projected to flip to Republicans for the first time in 20 years. These are signals. These are signals, ladies and gentlemen. The Real Clear Politics map, this is one of the best maps out there, projects that Donald Trump will retake the White House without winning Michigan or Wisconsin. The Real Clear Politics map also hands Virginia to Kamala Harris. But the reality is that as you drive through Northern Virginia, as many birdies have been sending us videos, you can see that Northern Virginia has not shown up for Kamala Harris. The lines are completely empty. Meanwhile, there are rural lines in the rural red counties of Virginia that stretch for miles. The rural vote is outperforming the urban vote 2 and 3-1 across the nation. Here is another sign, ladies and gentlemen, that Real Clear Politics is saying there is doom that is happening right now for Kamala Harris. Oh man, and we haven't even gotten to Kamala Harris last night and the levels of cringe, unspeakable. Let's talk about the early vote. Jesse Waters breaking it down, and how the early vote for Republicans is at an all-time record, and that nobody has ever seen anything like this, where Republicans are going into Election Day leading in Maricopa County, in Clark County in Nevada, in North Carolina, and in Georgia. Republicans leading in those states, not having to make up, and then on Election Day, you have a plus 25-point enthusiasm advantage for Republicans. Ladies and gentlemen, we're cooking. We're cooking. Hey, Alex, we got this clip? Baby, let's rock. Let's rock with some data here. Okay? Take us home, and then we have some, we have something amazing that just broke. Get ready. Get ready, boys. This is going to be an incredible night. Here we go.
The race in Pennsylvania, according to the polls, is tied. It's also tied in Michigan and Wisconsin. Harris can't afford to lose any of these states because Donald Trump's ahead by at least a point or two in North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada. It looks close, but the Trump campaign feels good about where they are because of the early vote. For the first time in history, Republicans are ahead in the early vote. That's in person and in mail ballot combined. They're ahead in Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, and Nevada, and have cut Democrats' early vote lead in Pennsylvania by half.
Ladies and gentlemen, there are signs. There's a little place called Dixville Notch. I don't know if we have any footage of it. It's funny. It's like this little place that is a small town. I think there's only 6 residents. Is that correct? 6 residents in this town in New Hampshire. All 6 of them voted for Joe Biden over Donald Trump in the last election. Now you might say that doesn't matter, but I would argue that if you're going to stitch together trend lines, which is the best that we can do right now, the fact that Dixville Notch in New Hampshire has shifted 50% right, meaning 3 of the votes went to Trump. 3 went for Harris, 3 went for Trump. Okay? That's a sign. The fact that Guam has moved 10 points to the right, that's a sign. That's an indicator of momentum, ladies and gentlemen. Blowout numbers coming out of Florida. Blowout numbers. And here we go. The swing state odds are now beginning to crater for Kamala. Ooh, here you love to see it. Donald Trump's odds are now in the 80% arena in Arizona. Tight in Nevada. Up 70% in Georgia. Donald Trump crushing in Pennsylvania. Michigan, Kamala is, and Wisconsin. Those are going to be tough. But the lines that we are seeing right now are inspiring. What we are seeing across the nation is a historic swing to the right. Here it is, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Dixville Notch. It was 5-0 for Biden, and it swung. You might say, okay, that's like a funny little antiquated, anecdotal thing. I don't think so. Not now. Not today. No, ladies and gentlemen. The margins don't add up. The math does not add up for Democrats. This moment, ladies and gentlemen, is a moment, and you can feel it, of a energy surge in our nation. And if you want to know exactly who has the positivity, who has the optimism and the spirit of winning. What's that famous UFC fight, Killer Klein? I think it was maybe Conor McGregor, where Joe Rogan's like, he's looking at his opponent. He's like, man, he looks stiff. He looks
Conor McGregor versus Jose Aldo. Won the belt.
Conor McGregor versus Jose Aldo.
Feeling the pressure at this moment.
Feeling the pressure is a famous Joe Rogan line where Joe Rogan calls what's going to happen in the fight before a single punch was thrown because of the look of the fighters. Ladies and gentlemen, we got a clip for you. MSNBC right now. Get out your salt shakers. It's called Salt That Lib on this program. We salt our libs on this program, so I want the salt shakers pouring into the comment section. We're going to be capturing all the salt today. This is your number one salt repository on the internet. We're going to be capturing and memeing all the salt today. We're going to have so many... No. We're going to have so many of those no memes. No! We're going to have so many of those today. We'll be watching. We'll be prepared. We're already in tune. We're already vibing with this. Get a load of this. MSNBC just broadcast one of the saltiest clips of the day so far. Get out your salt shakers. Salt these libs. There's going to be a lot of this happening today. MSNBC knows doom. And if Joe Rogan was calling this, and Joe Rogan endorsed Donald Trump last night, which was awesome. We got to cover that in just a second. But if Joe Rogan was calling this, he'd say, they're not in the moment. They're not in the moment. They're feeling the pressure right now. Check it out.
We still have an electorate, 70 million plus, that will be voting for a man who said he was going to assassinate for treason the chairman of the Joint Chiefs because he didn't support him on January the 6th, who has said just in recent days he was going to execute Liz Cheney with a firing squad, 9 guns pointed and shooting at her face. A man who has said that he was going to shut down CBS because he didn't like how they edited an interview. A man who said he was going to be a dictator from day one. A man who said he was going to terminate the Constitution. A man who said he was going to use the army and he was going to use the National Guard on his political opponents. I literally could go on all day. And yet you talk to Trump voters and they'll go, he didn't say that. Wait, now I didn't hear him. And then you say, well, here's the quote. And then they'll go, yeah, he didn't mean that. So there's something far more long-lasting than just Donald Trump, the candidate. There is a sort of Russian embrace of disinformation, a radical devaluing of truth over the last 9 to 10 years, and a complete ignorance on civics and what the term Madisonian democracy even means, what checks and balances even means, what judicial review even means, what the rule of law even means. How do we as a nation, even post-Trump, how do we reach those Americans who apparently didn't go to civics class, apparently didn't learn the basics of this Constitution, and have just been overwhelmed with this information over the past 9 years?
The data is on our side. And joining us right now is an absolute data expert, somebody whose X feed is a must read when it comes to the actual churn of the numbers behind this moment. And ladies and gentlemen, we've been live for an hour and a half, so things have changed since the start of the show. And so we are going to go right now to Eric Daugherty, who is the news director at Florida's Voice, and who can fill us in on where we are from an enthusiasm standpoint, what it means nationally, and where we're headed tonight. Eric, join the show. Eric Daugherty. I'm sorry about that. Did I get your name wrong, Eric?
You got my name right.
Come on. All right. You know what? We're live. We're ready to rock and roll. Okay. So Florida is live right now. Thank you for joining the program. We're a big fan of your X feed. We encourage everybody to follow. Let's just pop it up real fast here. We encourage everybody to follow because this is the TikTok of a feed that really shows you hard data, hard numbers, interprets them, and is able to make it is able to take the data and make it it's vision cast, like what it means. So I want to start with the state of Florida, since you work for Florida's Voice. What does the state of Florida enthusiasm gap between Democrats and Republicans show you, Eric?
Well, right now, Florida is just having a total red tsunami, and I'm not using that term lightly. I am not making that up. It is redder than 2020's election day, and you remember that was the year where we had the big discrepancy where Republicans wanted to not vote early and Democrats only wanted to vote early. This year, we've been hearing, oh, well, Republicans are voting early more, but Democrats are just going to come out on election day. Florida, you can see the lead is almost 1.1 million for Republicans. And by the way, let's just take a minute to realize that is now larger or similar to their overall statewide registration lead. And we're not even at 100% turnout. And so if you know anything about that, that means that the GOP is overperforming more than anyone, including myself. I'm very bullish on Florida Republicans. They are really showing up today. The election day margin is like R plus 20, something insane like that today. Not expected on my part, but in my opinion, I think this is going to keep going. I think President Trump is not only going to win this state, I think he can win it by over 10.
So if the Republican enthusiasm is in the plus 20%, that's a leading indicator, because we get these numbers from Florida so accurately. That's a leading indicator for what's happening across the country. You're seeing some positive signs out of the Northern Mariana Islands and Guam, Dixville Notch. Everything seems to be shifting rightward at a pretty significant clip. And Florida is kind of a canary in the coal mine there. How transferable is this to the national political arena?
Yeah, well, first you have to go look at Arizona, because Arizona is a state that Trump very, very narrowly lost in 2020, thanks to Maricopa County. And we're looking at Maricopa today. We're looking at Arizona, and the 10 a.m. Local update, Republicans are leading by double. What you have up now is not really changed. That rate is the same, and that's a couple hours old now.
Oh, yeah.
So
okay.
Republicans are keeping up pace. That number has doubled on both sides, and Republicans are not slowing down in Arizona. And so you say, okay, let's look at Florida, let's look at Arizona, and let's look at the nation. You mentioned everything shifting right. New Hampshire, we had that small town vote at midnight go tie 50-50 for Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. That was a town that Biden won every vote in that town of 6. And the last time Trump got a vote in that town was 2016. You go look at where Republicans are situated in these rural areas. We're seeing a flood. This is anecdotal, but it's also a lot of anecdotal. It's building up. We're seeing these massive lines in churches. We're seeing Bucks County. There were lines before polls even opened. Bucks County recently flipped Republican. Scott Presler's been basically living there for the past year. And it's just, you want to say it's shocking, but it's really not, because we kind of saw this coming. Even CNN was reporting the other week, if Trump easily wins, all of the indicators were there. So I think that right now what we're seeing is Republicans, they voted early, but a lot of them are still waiting to vote. So looking at Florida, looking at Arizona, you mentioned this is a lagging indicator. I do think this is a sign that all of this data we're seeing, we don't have the same real-time data in a state like Pennsylvania. We're going to have to wait on that. We're going to have to wait on Wisconsin, but this is promising.
So in North Carolina and Georgia, we haven't talked about those yet. Can you zoom in there? And the indicators that we've got is that Republicans might have won the early vote in North Carolina, that Georgia is planning on having an early call tonight. And talk us through what's the updates from those states.
Yeah, so there was a model posted in the early vote last night. And I don't remember the margin, but Trump narrowly won the early vote under that model, where Biden won the early vote, obviously, in 2020 in North Carolina. And just for perspective, again, if Trump wins the early vote at all, I mean, it's over. He's not losing the election day vote. I will very confidently state that. And I think Democrats know that too. So North Carolina, if he did win that early vote, I know you mentioned earlier that you're probably looking for an early call in those two states we talked about, North Carolina and Georgia. In this situation, he could easily surpass his 2020 margin in North Carolina. Now, going over to Georgia, that is a state that Trump obviously would be flipping back from 2020. In the early vote, we've seen black turnout, minority turnout down. The gap between white turnout and black turnout is significant, and the rural turnout is high. And again, this has been the story of the entire election. Rural turnout is up. It's not just Georgia, it's Wisconsin too. It's Florida too, and this is everywhere. So in terms of Georgia, yes, the elections official said that he's hoping for a lot of the vote in by 8 p.m. And Georgia, North Carolina, really going to set the tone for tonight. Obviously, we're gonna hope and wait and see if Trump can run up the margins there. I believe that if he's able to extend his 2020 margin in North Carolina, maybe get to his 2016 Georgia plus 3, 4, 5, bodes well for him in Pennsylvania, and that's the game.
So in Pennsylvania with these long lines, can you talk us through what they mean? We've also seen some scant lines inside of urban centers that tracks with the Trump data that was released yesterday saying that urban voters are just not showing up, and not just showing up by small percentages, in the millions comparatively between now and the 2020 election. Democrats have eroded or atomized millions of urban votes, and that's tending to play out. Meanwhile, rural votes are surging for Trump, and we've put up the lines. You can see them all across the country. These lines, I mean, this image alone is insane. Here's one that you posted. What is this an indicator of?
Yeah, well, when you see blue collar workers, you see working class, you see white people coming to the polls, and obviously, if you're trading a black vote for a white vote, Trump has made a lot of gains with minorities. We know he's trying to hold on to his white margins from 2016, 2020. But the bottom line is there's this Democratic hope that, oh, well, turnout might be down in the urban areas, but all these men are voting for Kamala Harris, and obviously she's going to do better with women. When you see a lot of these white men in line, that is a heavily Trump demographic. We're on election day, and you mentioned some of the scant images we've seen out of places like Philadelphia. And hey, there are some lines. It's election day, but I this is anecdotal, but I didn't see many minorities in those lines, and that's reflective in the early voting data out of Pennsylvania, where white working class Philly and Pittsburgh Republicans are up, and in black Philly and black Pittsburgh, Democrats are down from 2020. So I think that a lot of what we're seeing right now is really aligning with what we saw in Pennsylvania mail-in voting data. And again, you look at these lines, you see blue-collar workers. They're showing up. They're definitely voting for Trump in large numbers. And we don't have that much intel out of Pennsylvania yet, but it's a promising sign if you're the Trump campaign. What
you're looking at here is a line in Virginia. Now, this is something that other pollsters have come on our program and have said, guys, Virginia might be in play. It's like a 50-50 at this point. And you're looking at a line in Virginia from a rural area waiting to vote, and that's the reports that we've been getting. Do you see any indication that Virginia might actually flip for Trump, or something like a New Hampshire or a New Mexico or even a Minnesota?
Yeah, I think if Trump has a good night, he has a chance at one of those. I think it's a little bit too difficult to tell which one it could be. It could be all of them get close. Maybe one of them tips over. We've had some, you remember 2016, New Hampshire was razor thin. The state has trended, to the left since 2016. So no one knows which one it might be. But I've seen indications that at the very least, and again, winning a state like Virginia, winning a state like New Hampshire, at that point, Trump has already won the election. He's already won Pennsylvania. It would be a nice bonus to have. It would give him a mandate. It would definitely be fun to watch. But I do think that his odds of winning these states, based on preliminary reports we're getting, is probably higher than some might think. So Virginia, I don't think a flip is out of the question. Kamala Harris, probably the favorite there. But again, these rural surges, I don't think they're isolated.
No, I mean, we're seeing them around the country. Here's Charlie Kirk posting massive lines in rural Pennsylvania, majority men. It's happening. Go vote. You can see some homies wearing construction uniforms there, standing in line. That was a Halloween outfit for me this year, but this is actually what a humongous majority of men wear actually to work every single day. And I think Donald Trump wearing that orange vest, driving that dump truck, I think that you're going to really elicit a vote out of people that can't be reached by polls. I think there's like a secret Trump vote, Eric, and I like maybe like ask, it's an esoteric question, but what do you see in the polling that suggests that there is just, my intuition, millions of people that can't be reached by pollsters that are going to show up and crawl over broken flaming glass to vote for Donald Trump? That's what I get from the streets when we go out and talk with people, that these are people that just can't be reached scientifically or algorithmically by traditional polling, and they're going to show up on Election Day.
The New York Times said in their final polls, they said our final polls, and they had Kamala Harris leading in the likely voter, Trump leading in the registered voter. I think that's a way to cop out. Regardless of that, they said white Republicans just aren't answering our polls. And they said the same thing happened in 2020, that there's this huge gap, like 20-point gap. And they're like, white Republicans are not answering our polls. And there are a couple of theories as to why. One theory is a lot of them voted early this year and they're just kind of checked out. It could be that. It could be a variety of other reasons. Maybe they just don't answer polls on the weekend. A lot of these pollsters were polling on the weekend. It could be a million things. But the bottom line is that if you remember yesterday, Trump finished out the night. He got an endorsement from Joe Rogan. He got an endorsement from the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire, which is an anti-Trump group, mind you, until now, apparently. And the common denominator between those two is that is a lot of male appeal. That's a lot of young male appeal. Joe Rogan definitely with a lot of that. And, people saw it. People are seeing all the support lining up behind Trump, even from figures like Joe Rogan, who aren't, diehard Republicans, not even necessarily conservatives. And it's probably going to drive up a lot of this working class vote for Trump. And there's definitely, I think, a hidden Trump voter.
There's something that shocked me in these early numbers, and I haven't been really surprised by what's been coming out of Pennsylvania. For Republicans, I've been shocked at how underperforming Kamala Harris is. I mean, Kamala Harris is catastrophically underperforming with huge sections of the population that she needs to win. Maricopa County voting 2-1 right now for, and I think we have the official numbers back up, but Maricopa County vote has been shocking. This is, of course, the population center of Arizona. It's the urban center of Arizona, and it's going Republican when the early vote went Republican. Republicans winning, I think, by something like 180,000 votes in the early vote in Arizona. Now up in Maricopa, this has got to spell doom for Kamala Harris's hopes of winning Arizona.
Yeah, and the thing about Maricopa is it's not exactly a, deep red rural area. I mean, that is a swing county. That is a purple county. There's a lot of moderates there. So we have to see how these voters vote, right? We have to see, and sadly, we're going to be waiting because they're on the other side of the country. So we're going to be getting a lot of other data first. But in my opinion, when you see one party flock to the polls, what happens is that is a sign of a higher independent surge in favor of that party. Because think about it. Everyone has a registered party, but if Republicans are surging to the polls, their ideology more closely aligns with right-leaning independents. And so think about what is causing those Republicans to surge, probably similar things for those right-leaning independents. And then you think about Democrats down, left-leaning independents might be down too. They follow a similar worldview, and the motivating factors driving them to or away from voting for Kamala Harris are the same. So these numbers out of Maricopa County, it's another early indicator. Kamala Harris is going to want to be doing well there, especially if she wants to win the state. She has to win the county. But if she was doing so well among moderates, if she was getting all these, crossover votes, I just feel like the gap between Republicans and Democrats wouldn't be so high.
Yeah, so these are bad indications for Kamala, along with the enthusiasm in Florida. I guess historically, when Florida votes and leans right, when Florida shifts right in every single presidential election in your lifetime and mine, then that means that Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan go right. Everything moves to the right. That Florida has been an indicator of that. Do you believe that that's a worthwhile matrix that we should be looking at this through And that's how we've been trying to interpret the plus 25 margin for Donald Trump in Florida today.
Yeah, so in 2020, that was the only year when the state moved right, but the country did not. Now, there is another way of looking at this. Florida is still handy, and the reason for that is Duval County, Pinellas County, that's Tampa Bay, Jacksonville. Those counties moved left in 2020, even though the state did not. Early voting is showing both of those counties, pretty much every county, but Duval, Pinellas, Hillsborough, so that's the Tampa area, and Jacksonville, they're bolting to the right. And those are the two remaining bellwether areas in Florida that we can look at. And right now, Republicans are surging in those areas that Biden won. And they are urban, suburban populations. They have high Hispanic populations. They have higher minority populations. They have higher white educated populations, and they're surging Republican. Now, do I think that the shift in, say, Duval is going to be the exact same in some of these other states? Not the exact same, but you have to look at the direction. And think about 2020. Trump lost the election by under 50,000 votes. So the shift that has to happen from 2020 is very small. So to answer your question about Florida, I think that looking at the state as a whole, we'll have to see how far to the right it goes, but definitely look at Duval and Pinellas County.
What say you about Miami-Dade? That blew my mind in these early maps. That Miami-Dade is red, is Republican. Red. Is this going to continue? Is this a trend that's going to continue? We're now nearly at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The polls close in, 6 hours in the state? Yep. And so, I mean, the die is being cast right now. You can see here in the county view where Miami-Dade is light pink. Miami-Dade is voting red. And this is, of course, a melting pot county with huge numbers of Haitians, Puerto Ricans, Hispanics, Cubans, and they're going for Donald Trump. What does this say?
Well, an interesting fact about Miami, no Republican has ever won Miami-Dade County and got on to lose the presidency. Never happened in modern history. You can go back decades.
Wow.
So obviously a promising sign. Miami has swung to the right in registration. It's still a blue county. I mean, the county's blue. It's blue by registration. I think that their mayor is a Democrat. And when you look at what's happening in Miami, the most up-to-date, this is live right now, is R plus 3.5 by registration. So if Trump splits with independents, he wins Miami by 3 points. He lost it by close to double digits in 2020. Obviously, Hillary won it by, I think, 20 or 30 points. So that's not happening again. But Biden won the county, and I think Trump is on track to win Miami, which is big for him. And as I already said, that is another indicator that he is on track, I think, to win, fueled by this GOP enthusiasm. And you mentioned it has a lot of minorities. There's a lot of minority population in Miami. And the numbers right now are not looking good for Kamala Harris there.
So expand out. Last question here. What should we be watching for this evening? What are some of the rings of the bell that should say, wow, like things are going positively for the president? What would be some of your first indications?
Yeah, well, going in chronological order, Georgia, North Carolina, Florida. Well, very first is Florida. They have to report their votes by 7:30 in Eastern Standard Time. We're going to get the mail. We're going to get the early vote. If Trump is leading when the early vote drops, that state is going to be called at 8. The question is by how much is he winning? We're going to look at Duval. We're going to look at Pinellas, and we're going to see where Trump is at. Georgia, and moving up to Georgia, Duval has always voted to the left of Georgia. And that is a big indicator. That's a big thing to remember for tonight. So watch Duval County, Jacksonville, Florida. If the early vote drops at 7:30 p.m. and we have nothing for the entire country except Florida, look at Duval. Trump is winning Duval. His odds of winning Georgia go up. In Georgia, look at DeKalb County, look at Cobb County, look at the Atlanta metro area. If Kamala is not running up the margins there, she's done. North Carolina, you want to look in that research triangle. There are 3 major cities. You're going to look in Charlotte, and North Carolina should have results early too. So we're kind of going up the coast. We're going to look at Georgia. We're going to look at North Carolina. Those are the first 2 signs to watch for both campaigns to see where Trump is at. And if we can get an early call out of Georgia and North Carolina. And I have a hunch this is the Trump campaign's main goal. And that's why they were in, I think, North Carolina, Pennsylvania these last few days. Run up the margins on the East Coast, run up the margins in Pennsylvania. You don't even have to worry about Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, Nevada. It's possible. It's probably one of his clearest paths to victory. So obviously, as the night goes on, we're going to be all over the place. But at least for the first few hours of the night, watch Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, finally. Watch Pittsburgh, watch Allegheny County. That is not as deep blue as Philadelphia, but it has a lot of suburbs. And if Kamala Harris is not doing well in Allegheny County, that is a really bad sign for her.
So, I mean, if that's the ball game, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania.
That's it. You wouldn't even have to. I mean, obviously, we would all want to stay up to have fun. But if you wanted to, you could go to bed knowing Trump would be the 47th president if that happens.
Eric, we really appreciate your X feed, man. You put a lot of work into it. I want to pop it back up. Go pay a visit here and make sure that you are following along, because he does such an exceptional job of making the data digestible and bite-sized, where you can really see where the country is headed. Eric, you do great work, man, and we hope to have you back on the show very soon.
Thanks, Benny. Glad to be here.